Can you explain what the human error was last week that we heard from the State Board of Elections?
That's a good question. I'm waiting to hear myself. I'm a little leery about saying human error if something can't be done but once.
As it stands right now, you don't necessarily believe what the state is saying.
Well, what I'm saying right now, until I get a definitive answer and response from the vendor, I'm not real satisfied.
That was the director of the Baltimore City Board of Elections talking about the potential of something happening that I'm told never happens, which is voter fraud. The backstory here is that a post-election audit was done and they claimed it was discovered that the Baltimore City results in the unofficial election night reporting totals did not match the results in the certified internal reporting system. After that, the State Board of Elections released a statement which said that the source of the over-report was identified as human error and resolved. This led to the aforementioned director of the Baltimore City Board of Elections to say that he was not satisfied with this at all, and his quote was, "The explanation that I received in writing right now is not clear and not acceptable."
The week after Election Day, it's all eyes on this warehouse in West Baltimore. The City Board of Elections and volunteers continue to canvass, opening ballots, scanning them, and adding the totals to candidates' tallies. So far, 3 city council races have yet to be determined. Incumbent Eric Costello leads political newcomer Zach Blanchard by a slim margin. Paris Gray and Bilal Ali vying for Councilman Christopher Burnett's seat, open after Burnett declined to run again. And incumbent Robert Stokes trails Jermaine Jones, but the races remain undetermined as thousands of ballots continue to be counted.
And we're just, staying diligent and making sure we stay apart and engage in a process.
Jones on hand Monday, watching that count, but wants to know how a human error could have led to a mistake in Election Day results.
A lot of your trust is put into the city, that when you go into this polling place and when they collect your ballot, that it's going to be collected and handled with the type of care that it deserves.
The State Board of Elections calls the city's discrepancies a human error that was later resolved. But the director of Baltimore City's elections, Armstead Jones, isn't so sure. Can you explain what the human error was last week that we heard from the State Board of Elections?
That's a good question. I'm waiting to hear myself.
Well, you're the director.
Well, I am the director. The explanation that I've received in writing right now is not clear and not acceptable.
What do you mean not acceptable?
Well, I know what the system can do and what it's not supposed to do. So until we get clarification from the state, I'm going to leave it there.
There are reports of concerns about a flash drive with votes on it. Based on Jones's responses, it's unclear if the state believes a flash drive was read by a tabulator more than once. So what happened with the flash drive?
Well, let me just say this. A flash drive, according to the system, can only be inserted once. And once it's put in, it cannot duplicate.
Is that what happened?
I don't know that yet. I'm a little leery about saying human error if something can't be done but once.
As it stands right now, you don't necessarily believe what the state is saying.
Well, what I'm saying right now, until I get a definitive answer and response from the vendor, I'm not real satisfied.
Just 2 years ago, election-related flash drives back in the headlines. Drives for 12 precincts in the July 2022 primary were misplaced. Given the history of questions under Jones' supervision, do you believe that you are the right person to oversee the city elections moving forward, given the questions and concerns and issues that we've seen?
Well, let me just say this. In the years that I've been here, there have been some successful elections. Every election that is held in Baltimore or any jurisdiction has its issues. No different than Baltimore City.
Should there be this many issues with an election?
I don't know how many issues you're talking about.
So it's definitely a pretty chaotic situation there, which should not come as much of a surprise considering that it's Baltimore. However, this is really indicative of the potential issues that can come up when we have such a complicated voting system, where you have these USB drives that are loaded with vote tallies, which if a person has a nefarious intent, it opens it up to potential fraud. On a similar note, the Georgia Board of Elections held a hearing about signature verifications and the potential for duplicate ballot scanning. As I said in my previous video about that, because of the YouTube censorship police, I'm not going to get too much into the details, but I'll play some highlights from that hearing, and after you watch it, you'll get the idea.
I'm trying to get to the point of finding evidence that 17,852 ballots actually exist. So there either need to be ballot images, or we need to go look at the ballots, the paper ballots.
Well,
it's very simple.
As I explained at the beginning, we have the paper ballots. The paper ballots exist. There's no 17,000 missing ballots. The discrepancy, the 17,000 discrepancy, was because of that scanner error, the programming error in the scanner. That got corrected. The results were recertified and re-reported, and that accounted for the 17,000 difference. There was no missing ballots. Like I said, we have hand counted every single ballot.
Great. Please. Then let's look at the paper ballots. The ballot image is supposed to be accompanied by a SHA file, which proves that the ballot image has not been tampered with. Did Fulton County, this is a question for Fulton County, find and confirm the SHA files for all of the ballot images?
Well, respectfully, this is outside the scope of the original complaint. And as Ms. McGowan has stated, if there are further investigations or further complaints to be made, that's one thing. But today we need to stay within the confines of this complaint. So we don't have an answer to SHA files. SHA files were not a part of the complaint. They're not a part of the investigation.
Thank you very much. This is about the vote totals in an election, and the SHA files are part of the evidence that shows that the vote was not tampered with, that the ballot or the image of the ballot was not tampered with, and it actually exists. And actually, I did request the SHA files. I asked for that 4 months ago, and I'm sorry that you were not informed. So were the SHA files, and that, to go further, the SHA files are part of the electronic record that should have been kept according to State Election Board Rule 183, 112.13. So it's simply a matter, and those are retained by the superintendent and the clerk of the court. So an unanswered question. Okay. For the investigator, do you agree that a SHA file, there's a SHA file for every ballot?
I'm admittedly not a technical expert. I am legal counsel to the Secretary of State's office. I expect there would be, but again, that was not part of this investigation.
Okay. I asked for a technician to be here to answer some of these questions. Is there a technician here that could answer these questions?
No, we have a primary going on right now, and our technical experts are busy administering that.
For the investigators, do we need to go to the clerk of the court and examine the electronic file and the physical paper ballots?
No, this has been an exhaustive investigation. We have spent hundreds of man-hours on it. As counsel for Fulton County reported, they have been very cooperative. They have spent hundreds of man-hours while they've been administering this primary that is going on right now. So we feel like this has been exhaustive. We've researched all of the documentation that we need to reach our conclusions.
It's hard for me to reach a conclusion that thousands of ballots actually exist. So the only thing I would recommend is that we go to the clerk of the court, obtain the electronic file that should contain all of the ballot images and the physical paper ballots for review. So machine count 2 has 17,352 votes for which there are no ballots. And still no ballot images. But the report, the allegation is from Mr. Rossi that 3,125 duplicate ballots were counted. I'm not talking about the ICC 14 scanner that ballots were misnamed and reloaded on it. I'm talking about 3,125 duplicate ballots that were counted.
And again, as we concluded, and it's in the report, we did partially substantiate that we believe that there are duplicate ballot images. Whether or not those were actually included in the tabulated results is inconclusive.
Well, what do you believe? What do you believe?
Let me ask a question. You made a comment you didn't know whether they're included, but you just told me that you had 3 different counts that came up substantially. One of them was a hand recount. So if there were duplicate ballots, it would have shown in the hand recount along with the other 2.
I think that's a reasonable assumption also because the results of the recount were actually lower, somewhat lower, marginally lower than the originally certified results. So if you had 3,000 ballots that were counted twice, you would expect the results to be larger by that amount.
Right. So in the hand count, Governor Kemp's team found 6,653 errors or duplicates. So, and that was in the count, and the totals were given. And to my knowledge, those count totals have never been amended or reversed. And likewise, the 3,125 that Mr. Rossi found are duplicate counted ballots. Could I ask Mr. Rossi, am I interpreting this correct?
Can
Please,
you,
give it in 2 minutes.
please.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Okay. I'm an expert on the hand audit, okay? And as Dr. Johnson said, it's been vetted and found factual by Governor Kemp's team who investigated it for over 6 weeks. The numbers did match. You're right, Mr. Chairman. The reason they matched is because they include the duplicated counted ballots. The duplicates are over 6,000. The net difference for candidate Biden are 4,4081 net false absentee ballots counted for candidate Biden over candidate Trump in the hand audit. And that is only a subset of the 527,000 that were looked at. That was only the 148,000 absentee ballots. So for those that you do math, if you do 4,4081 and divide it by 148,000, that's almost a 3%, much more than a fraction, a 3% error rate. So to answer your question, yes, the hand audit got to 527, but how they got to 527 was over 6,000 duplicated and the net difference being 4,081 for candidate Biden. I hope that clarifies this
Thank you.
for the board.
Excuse me. This has been adjudicated, and the numbers are entirely different that were found by our investigators 2 years ago. I cannot let those numbers stand on the record because they are incorrect, and our investigators found numbers, and it was in the hundreds, not in the thousands.
I know this is not meant to be
No, sir, I'm sorry.
This is not meant to be a back and forth, but when Dr. Johnson asked the investigators, when they did their investigation, tell me the totality of the errors. You can go back and look at the transcript. Investigator Sigorin said, and you can almost quote me, we did not go into that for this investigation. Look at the transcript, please.
Does the investigation confirm that there are missing ballot images?
Yes.
Yes. Do you know why 380,761 ballot images from Election Day machine count are not available?
We subpoenaed Fulton County for all of their ballot images. We received approximately 518,000 ballot images.
From Election Day?
Those were for the recount.
Those are from the recount, but we have no ballot images for 380,761 ballots from Election Day, correct?
What was subpoenaed was the ballot images for the recount because that's what this case was about, not the election day.
Does Fulton County know why there are not 380,761 ballot images from Election Day?
As with the investigators, we have not been apprised of this allegation. This is the first I'm hearing about it. I have no idea what the basis of that allegation is, and so we would have to, we can't answer that at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm the co-founder of Voter GA. I've written 2 letters to you about SEB 2022-348, the complaint that explains how Georgia's voting system has a QR code counting error that caused the Tennessee Secretary of State to stop using the same system we use here. At the December 19th SEB meeting, the complaint was postponed because Deputy Director Michael Barnes was unavailable to answer questions about it. At the January Curling v. Raffensperger trial, Mr. Barnes admitted under oath that he is by no means an expert in voting system applications, cybersecurity, malware, or how malware can defeat logic and accuracy testing. In my February 11th letter to you, I tried to alert you that Mr. Barnes' sworn testimony proves he would not be qualified to answer questions about this complaint. At the February 13th SEB meeting, I planned to alert you again before the case was heard, but the former chair had removed all public comments from the agenda. At that meeting, Mr. Barnes answered questions about the complaint anyway, and the board voted 3-1 to dismiss it without hearing from the complainants. It's clear to us who saw that Mr. Barnes had not read the complaint, did not understand its contents, had not spoken with the complainants, and did not perform an investigation. He did not know that the complaint showed audit logs had 65 of 67 counties surveyed, had that error. He didn't do a root cause to find the problem, didn't perform a system evaluation. He was not aware that thousands of errors were found in Gwinnett, Floyd, and DeKalb, the county where the system declared the wrong winners. Dr. Johnson had to explain to Mr. Barnes that the QR code error causes the system to accept a ballot and not count it, and that is undetectable with our current reconciliation procedures. So therefore, because of the importance of this complaint, I ask you to reopen this case, conduct a legitimate investigation with your own investigator, and hear from the complainants, just as the board used to do before the former chair eliminated complainant testimony to suppress the evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
So you will hear a great deal during this presentation about documents such as ballot images, batches loaded reports, and tabulator tapes. And all of those documentation, they're all very important, and we expect that the counties will keep those, maintain those, and make sure that they are complete. But it's important to note that they play no role in the actual tabulation of results in an election. Again, those results are determined by the paper ballots, which we have for 2020. And the conclusion of this investigation, which we will get into the details of in a minute, is that Fulton County used improper procedures during the recount of the presidential contest in 2020. The investigation also shows that there are some duplicative ballot images in the ballot images that Fulton County provided. And this suggests that some ballots may have been scanned more than once. But what cannot be decided conclusively or confirms conclusively is whether or not those duplicative ballot images were included in the count. So we don't know for certain whether or not those were in the tabulated results, and we will get in.
Now I'd like to speak directly to those who have fought factually, respectfully, and relentlessly for the truth over the last 3 years. As of 4/10/24, I got another one of these certified letters from the state election board. Every time I get one of those letters, my wife sets it on my desk and she says, "You got another one of those certified letters. I hope you're not being indicted this time." But anyways, as of that letter, it has now been factually proven that both the hand audit, this is really, really important, and the certified machine count, yes, the certified count, have both been found to be in violation of Georgia election law. Based on these findings, to those that have fought factually, respectfully, and relentlessly, I'll close with one word: vindicated.